It's time to experience Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast.
Hey, kid, you want a toy?
What does the man know about toys?
Action figures each sold separately. Batteries not included.
With Kung Fu Grip, the hands that grip.
I have 3 of each. 1 to display, 1 to open, and 1 just in case.
Why do you keep all your toys in boxes? How do you play with them?
I don't. I collect them.
You're not a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. You are a toy!
Action figures and playsets for ages 6 and up. Way up!
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12. Brian, did you think we'd get to episode 12?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's enough to talk about in the toy community that we'd make it this far. Yeah.
I'm just happy that everyone still wants to hear from us. But, you know, it's kind of a special occasion for Thrill of the Hunt because we recorded our first show in April of 2020.
2 years. Wow.
Yep. And, you know, speaking of the show, Brian and I did a toy show, a Star Wars toy show here in the Orlando area a couple of weekends ago on a Sunday. And, you know, several people came up and talked to us. Even if they didn't buy something from our booth, we did a good job, I think, of engaging everybody that walked by and talked to a lot of great people. And if you're one of those people that we talked to, thanks for stopping by our booth and talking to us. And we're glad you found us. Yeah,
absolutely. We had a great time talking to everybody and telling them about what we have fun talking about on a consistent basis on this podcast and what Thrill of the Hunt is really about. And it seemed a lot of people were down with that. I mean, it seemed like they really enjoyed it and were curious and wanted to learn more. And hopefully they listen in and hear that they made it into the show this episode, that all those folks that we talked to maybe even sold a Star Wars figure here and there too, to help us continue to create more room in our collections for other things.
Absolutely. And I was encouraged by the number of younger collectors. So when I use that term, I'm talking collectors that are, you know, in their late teens, early 20s. I was encouraged by the number of them coming through to a Star Wars show. So that made me feel good that, you know, there's still people out there that want to collect. Because I know sometimes we talk about on the show how our generation is probably the last generation where the hobby is going to be as big as it is. But I'm glad to see that even if it doesn't continue as big as it is or was, that there are people to continue it on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was very encouraged to see that. And I remember one story in particular of a younger brother to an older brother who had grown up during the prequel time and had handed down his prequel figures to his younger brother, and was telling me how he was trying to recreate the Geonosis arena fight scene from Attack of the Clones and how excited he was to fill in a few Clone Wars figures that I had to help build his diorama. So hearing stories like that, it just shows you that there's still a love out there in all ages and in all backgrounds, and may it be, you know, any sex or background. Definitely there still is a bit of love there for collecting and putting your figures in cool scenarios.
Absolutely. I remember that young man very well. And he was just so excited to just talk about what he was doing with his collection. That was pretty awesome. And, you know, on the other end of the spectrum, there was an older couple there that bought the Black Series Race Speeder from me. And I thought that was cool too. So like, you know, it really covered all age groups. And that's encouraging to me because sometimes we kind of think of it, oh, well, it's our generation, you know, but yeah. So that was really neat. And, you know, I'm like, telling my wife about that experience, and she's like, oh, that'll probably be us going to a Star Wars show when we're that age. Right. Yeah, I hear you there. Well, that was a lot of fun, but we also in just a month's time from last time we spoke to y'all on our last episode, there's been a lot of happenings, a lot of news, and a lot of different upcoming releases and announcements, and we're going to go through some of those in the beginning of our episode, and then once we get through that, we're actually going to cover one of the main topics of our discussion today, which will be talking about international collecting, because at
at the small toy show that we did a couple weeks ago, we noticed there were quite a few people who were unaware or unclear of how international and import type toy companies work, and that there were other options and how they were available. And we ended up having some really fun educational conversations with a lot of collectors, teaching them about other things that are out there. And we hope to do that for a lot of our listeners here today towards the end of today's episode.
Absolutely. And, I think the other thing with that is that we're both of us have been on a little bit of an international collecting kick ourselves. Me on, and we'll get to it, but me on the Super Sentai side, and you on some of most of it coming out of Asia. But we've both been on that kick. So you absolutely being able to share that, being able to share with some people that didn't even realize that Super Sentai existed.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. But yes, we do have. There's quite a bit of toy news to run.
Quite a bit of domestic US based news first to get through.
Yes.
So let's start there. And Chris, why don't you tell us what's going on with Mattel? So
Mattel, it was a couple weeks ago, revealed the new things that are going to be coming out like late spring, summertime for Masters of the Universe in both the Origins and in the Masterverse. And by the way, Brian, I have dabbled in the Masterverse.
Now. You did buy some.
I got the Triclops, and I'm gonna get the Trap Jaw, but I am keeping it to just those because those are my two favorites, and I'm not going any further. Even when they've had them they've had them like on sale at Target. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm only doing the two. But I'm not gonna run through them all here, but they basically revealed it, and they did it in kind of a one day was the heroes from Origins, and then the next day was the villains of Masterverse, and then and then they did the villains from Origins and heroes from Masterverse. I don't remember exactly the order, but there's some cool figures coming for you He-Man 2000X fans. The Masterverse is getting the 2000X version of He-Man and Skeletor, which a lot of people seem to be excited about. If you don't know what He-Man 2000X is, go look it up. It's a very interesting series. But I think the thing that excited me the most is we're getting the Roton, which is a vehicle for the bad guys. It was probably my favorite bad guy vehicle. And then we're getting Snout Spout.
All right, you got to explain that one to me.
Yeah, so he's his head. So he's kind of like a firefighter, and he's a good guy. Okay. And he has an elephant head. And in the original toy, because I'm not sure if you could do it in this one, you could put water in it, and you would push a button, and his nose would squirt the water. That's how, Snout Spout.
That makes sense. There you go. I love that. Toys of the 80s. We just told you what it was in the name. We didn't make you have to think at all.
Oh, the other thing they're doing in the Masterverse line, which was very interesting, is they're doing He-Man from the new Netflix, the more kid-based series.
Gotcha.
So they're covering all of it. They're doing Sunman in the Masterverse, and then in Origins, they're doing the other characters from Sunman. Pigface, not a very original name, but and there's two other characters they're doing. I'm really glad that they brought Sunman into the line, even if I don't plan to collect them all. I'm really glad that they brought him in here, and they're making sure that they give the history of that and tell the story of how that came about. And actually, if you want to know about that, there was a good show that was hosted by Michael French on the Retro Blasting channel, where he had Dante from the Infinity Equation podcast and David Vonner. And if you don't know who David Vonner is, he's almost a legend in the toy creating world. He worked for Toy Biz back in the original Marvel Legends days. He was the one who did a lot of the work on the Marvel Universe line when he was with Hasbro. He's now working with Nacelle, and he's creating toys there. They're bringing back a couple.
Right. That's right. I saw that announcement.
Yep, and they're bringing back a couple classic lines. But they talked about like the origins of Sunman and other minority toys from back in the 80s. So it was really informative. It's worth going and checking out. but they kind of go into the history of Sunman and how he came about. So that was the Masters of the Universe stuff. I will say the last day was a little disappointing. They had such good reveals all week, and then the last day, pretty much the fandom was expecting that the announcement was going to be Origin Snake Mountain.
Oh, they thought like a big play set or some kind of announcement like that. Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was they're doing like this super articulated version of He-Man, kind of more in the classic with the head sculpt that everybody loves, that remembers from when we were kids. I don't remember what the size was. I think it was more in the Masterverse size, but it's going to be really like decked out with articulation. And while people are excited to get it, everyone was kind of like, oh, that was kind of a, you know, after building up all week, it was kind of a letdown. But they did say they're going to reveal more, probably late summer, which will come, you know, fall, early winter. So we'll just stay tuned and see what's going on.
Yeah. And so we also had, on top of the Mattel news with Masterverse and Motu Origins, we also had the Walmart Collector Con and the Target Haulathon, which both happened in conjunction at the same time. Haulathon actually is still going on as of this recording. And actually, there's still, I think, 1 or 2 more weeks left, and it released on each Friday. So with the Walmart Collector Con, I'll let Chris talk about some of the big things there with G.I. Joe and Power Rangers. That's his expertise. But before we jump into that, I'll talk real quickly about Targathon and Haulathon, and I'll hand it back over. So Haulathon, actually, as many of you know, is specifically focused on NECA and NECA properties, meaning like Funi and Kid Robot, tied in Chia Pet, also tied in with NECA's line of 7-inch or 1/10 scale size figures, or 1/8 to 1/10 scale figures. And within that, NECA put out some new releases each Friday, many of which we knew from your earlier teases. Most recently, we've seen the Evil Dead 40th anniversary of the original film, not Evil Dead 2, but Evil Dead, with the first ever release figure based off of that individual look in the NECA style. We also had a release of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, beautiful retro style figure. And a reminder for retro style, they're a little bit taller than your classic NECA, kind of more in like a World Box or TB League style figure. And what I mean by that is, look it up if you're curious what World Box or TB League is. Those are companies that make basically, it's kind of like a mesh between almost like a doll and an articulated figure mold that you can then put clothing on and everything like that. So what the retro style is, it's a very much flexible, usable, being able to change it in different directions and pose it a little bit easier than the harder plastic you get with the classic NECA TMNT line. And the Elvira figure, beautiful sculpt, amazing detail. They released both the signature edition, regular edition. As a reminder, with the Haulathon, all the signature edition items are unique into the Haulathon event. All of the other figures that are being released will be released in regular installments through other venues later on, which means if you miss out during the Haulathon, if you're in one of those areas where it's reseller city and it's hard to get your hands on things, don't worry, you'll be able to get it again. The only things that are going to be one time only will be the signature edition versions, like the signature edition of Elvira or Kevin Eastman's Fugitoid, or with Howie Mandel's Gremlins 2, for example. Also, we had some different Foonies like Kermit, Stitch, Hello Kitty items, but we also had some great TMNT releases. We had the cartoon versions of Toka and Razor. We had Super Bebop and Mighty Rocksteady, which are the robot versions of those characters. And I mentioned Fugitoid from the first figure release of the Mirage line, Mirage Comics line, and Gremlins 2. I mentioned Signature Edition, but Gremlins 2 Gizmo version from that film, first time release from the second film version of Gizmo, and a number of other things. If you're going to check out the Holothon site, yes, they actually have their own site. If you're international, you'll be purchasing directly from holothon.com. If you're not international and domestic, you'll be purchasing through target.com. And there are links on the holothon.com site that'll redirect you to the individual product pages of target.com. So it'll make it a little bit easier for you to find things. But every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time, new figures release. So that's how Holothon has worked. Now I'm going to turn it back to Chris to talk about Walmart Collector Con.
Well, before I start on Walmart Collector Con, I want to ask, what was the pre-order experience like if you were pre-ordering stuff?
It actually was pretty awesome because they screwed up in a good way for us. Basically what happened was on holothon.com, they posted all the figures up, but they made it available only for US domestic. They made the mistake of not making it available for only international. So for the US people, it was a breeze. For everyone outside of the US, it was terrible. So a lot of items sold out right away. I feel so bad for our international listening community. So like the Turtle 4-pack of the all green, light green style turtles 4-pack that was released. Those sold very quickly. Everything went, if you weren't online right away, went all to the US folks. Now they did apologize and later fix the problem, but then they made the same mistake this I think yesterday or earlier this morning. It accidentally posted again to US people, and they seem to be having problems. But the Target piece was interesting because everything was supposed to launch at 9 a.m. on the first Holothon Friday, but nothing ended up going up until midday. So they really messed up. They timed it with a YouTube video announcement at noon rather than the 9 a.m. when they were supposed to launch it. So only half the items launched and the other half launched later in the day on Target. Holothon.com was totally screwed up in the sense that it was supposed to be only international, but it ended up being only US and then switching over to only international later on. So it was a bit of a confluence, a mess up there, but eventually it was all figured out. And like I said earlier, a reminder, all of the items in their regular editions, not signature editions, will be made available in other venues later on. So you didn't miss out. Don't feel that FOMO, okay? You'll be fine. You know, the only thing you need to worry about is if you missed out in the signature editions. But guess what? A lot of these individuals do signings at cons local to you, and usually you can get it for a lot better price in person. You can bring your own item to get signed, maybe even that item you wanted signed. And a great thing to bring up, actually yesterday, the actress for the original April O'Neil, Judith Hogue, yesterday put up that she actually has some extra press passes that were used to autograph and put within the signature editions of the April O'Neils that released a year ago. And she'll be signing those and giving those out if you go to pay for an autograph from her at a con in the near future. So there are other ways of getting some opportunities to connect with these celebrities.
Yeah, that's good news. And man, it just seems like these pre-order experiences, unfortunately, it seems like that's par for the course. I'm glad to hear that they eventually got it corrected, but you know, and I'll get into it in a minute on the Walmart side of things, but I have noticed, like, you know, going in that my Target has this they have the normal display area where a lot of the Holothon stuff is. And I did see an Elvira figure. I don't know if it's the Elvira figure you're referring to. But they also
there's only one Elvira figure. It's just one is signature edition, one's not. One includes a card with her signature on it.
Okay. Then I did see it. I don't know if it was signature or regular. I'm assuming since it's during Holothon that it's the signature, but they also have a little tower set up and they've been putting different stuff on it. So it's been, you know, from what I've seen online, it seems like a lot of people are finding what they want. But again, our international listeners, man, I feel for you. And that's why I don't complain that international listeners over in the UK and stuff have been getting stuff from Pulse and stuff before we have here, because I know on a normal basis, they have it so tough trying to collect the stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, having to pay the crazy shipping costs from these US-based companies, it can be really tough.
Well, and then they have to pay on top of that, they have to pay the VAT tax that they have over there. So it's like, it's crazy. But speaking of pre-order experiences where your mileage might vary, I actually I made the call in our text group that I often refer to here. I said the night before, I'm like, oh, so is everybody ready for these to go up at 6 or 7 tomorrow morning,
Right.
even though they're not supposed to go up? And sure enough, it went up early. I think at 7 a.m. Most of the
Every
collector
time.
Yep.
Every time.
It's like, it frustrated a lot of people because, you set a time and people try and, like there are people that work and they have meetings, and I'm not suggest you go trying to rearrange your work day, like your work day is probably should be your priority, but people try and shift things around to be available to do these things. And then you launch it early. It puts people at such a disadvantage. And, I checked it, and sure enough, I think once somebody had texted that the Star Wars figures, except for the Stormtrooper, which did not go up until much later in the day, it was the only one. And then of course the Joes went up and the Power Rangers. But so basically what they had there is they had some, and I'll kind of start with wrestling. We don't do a lot of wrestling, but there was quite a bit of wrestling for CollectorCon for Walmart. And they put those up. They put up, there was about 5 figures for TVC that were exclusive. There was 2 different Bespin Cloud City guards.
Yep.
The Death Star gunner, the Stormtrooper, which, as I already said, went up much later in the day and was probably. Why are we doing troop builders as exclusives? Just on a side note, that question was asked by several people, but and then I'm drawing a blank on the 5th one, but those went up.
Another version of R2D2.
That's correct. You are correct. I think Dagobah or something like that, or maybe Hoth. I don't remember, but
it's a repack.
Yeah. So, and then the GI Joe retro, the classified retros, which are repacks, just done on they're repacks, but they're done the decoed a little bit different. They're put on a card back, much like they've done with the Star Wars with the 40th anniversary stuff.
Right.
They're doing it with Joe. The only one there that's a real significant difference is the Gung Ho, which is colored like the classic Gung Ho with that almost that kind of like aqua color, which is cool. So we had those. We had the Power Rangers had those. Remember, I was saying we were going to get a wave 2 of those Power Rangers, those like 6-inch. Not much articulation, like the ones you picked up for me, Brian.
The Megazords.
Yep, they're doing 4 more of those, all Mighty Morphin. So if unlike the first wave where we got one from Ninja Storm and one from Lost Galaxy, these are all MMPR. I'm fine with all of them except the black and gold. I just don't get into the black and gold versions of them. I know a lot of people like them, but I like these. I hope this line continues because originally they only slotted it for 2 waves. So I'm in for the 3, the Dragon Zord in Warrior mode, the Tiger Zord, and then the Tiger Zord in Warrior mode, or actually I think Mega Tiger Zord. But so they did those, and a lot of people had trouble just, even after stuff kind of got cleared up and people had trouble adding to cart, the same things. And then of course with Walmart, the question is, will they ship the pre-order, or will the stuff show up in stores first, and will your order get canceled? And so
will it be destroyed in the mail?
Oh, that's almost a given at this point.
That's a given. Yeah.
Look, I'm so glad that I'm an opener sometimes, but
right.
The one other thing they had that I think is worth mentioning is they had some Lego, and there's the Death Star Trench Run and the training on Dagobah. Those are not
series.
Yes.
And let's talk about that. Yeah, it's a new series. Yeah, finish what you were saying about the exclusive piece.
I was going to say those 2 are not exclusive, but the Lego Trash Compactor, that is exclusive to Walmart and the Lego store only.
And what's cool about these is it's a new diorama line for Lego, and it's not just Star Wars. They're starting to do this in a lot of different ways. So far, we have 3 from Star Wars, but the 4th one that's coming out is going to be Jurassic Park, and that'll be coming out showing the scene of when the Tyrannosaurus, when we see it for the first time, break through and step on top of the car and try to find Lex and Tim. And so it's that scene. but in more of the smaller diorama set with the minifigures like we saw with the Star Wars one. That one comes out on April 17th, which is a special day for me.
Let the audience know why that's a special day for you.
I may have traveled around the sun on that day. Yeah.
So if you guys want to get Brian a little gift,
there you go. Yeah. So just throwing the hints out there. Yeah, but one thing I was super excited about, and I want a full explanation on record from Chris why he is debating this, was the Sideshow Clone Wars line, which I've talked about before, which has already announced and put on pre-order and is scheduled to come out mid-year, mid to probably third quarter this time at this point. The Clone Wars style, animated style, Anakin and Obi-Wan, to go along with his Jedi brothers, is the needs no introduction, but Clone Wars animated style Yoda. And it looks amazing. But Chris, why are you questioning buying this?
So for me, you know, I really wanted to like this more than I did. I don't know, something, it just looks yeah, FOMO.
Yeah,
it looks very it has a very maquette look to it, and I couldn't place it. You know,
animated.
I get that, but it's just, it doesn't look. I think what it is, because I asked Sarah and she's like, it looks a little off. And I asked some other friends of mine, and I think what it is this is based more on the earlier seasons of Clone Wars, because they did go through and when the later
the look did change, especially with the final season. I mean, you could see the difference in technology. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's what this is. This is based more on those first couple of seasons. And I'm more of a fan of the Yoda from the later seasons. Because like I said, this one just looks a little maquette to me. So I'm passing for now. I do reserve the right to go and change my mind, but I'm
you can come and visit mine. I'll buy it for $165. I think that's a steal for a 6-scale animated style Yoda. I think that's a great deal.
It is a good price. So here's the thing. I can come visit that. And I was going to ask you on the Lego sets, do you plan to get the training on Dagobah?
I thought about it, but I already have the bigger set of that. You know, the fully fleshed out, larger scale to the minifigs, like the Dagobah training. And I also have the pop version of that.
Yeah. So
I mean, yeah. I don't know if
I would tell you could come visit that at mine, but I'm in the same boat. I don't know if I need that, because I have the same two things that you just said you have, I have. And I'm like, do I need that? Right. And especially when we talk about room, like these are the types of struggles now. I mean, this is why we were at the show selling stuff. It's not because we're trying to make money. We're parting with stuff that we need to make room for other stuff. And we're parting with stuff that it's not that we don't. If I had enough room, I'd keep everything, but I don't, and so this is the stuff that, I probably would display much later. There are other things that I have that I would display before I would display that. So it's at the back. So it's time to just kind of let another collector have it and enjoy it. But that's why we were there.
And I'll finish up one last thing for me before I turn it over to you to jump into the Hasbro Pulse conversation. So NECA announced, after much teasing over 2+ years, the Turtle Van. So we already have a Super 7 coming, which is in the style of a modernized Playmates, larger scale to work with the Ultimates. This version from NECA is very much based off of the animated look, much like the characters are, right? They're not based off of the Playmate toy versions of the animated show. They're based off of the Fred Wolf animated cell look of the show. So they showed a prototype, and it said it wasn't final, so they're still taking in some feedback, but I think overall it looked pretty good. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by the price point. I thought it was going to be in the 350 range based on seeing the 450 to 500 from Super 7. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way they're going to make it any less than 350. Maybe at the least 300, but 250, I was like, that's actually what I would have thought would be a fair price point on it, and not making it a ridiculous amount like we see. So I was super surprised. And I think that is actually a very fair price considering there are some third-party stuff, teaser for a later conversation, out there that's being developed and created overseas in Malaysia, that looks similar to what NEC is doing, but not as closely detailed to the show as NEC is doing, obviously, because they have a license. But the unlicensed one goes at about just a little bit under, around 230, 240. So if NEC is putting their price point, and they're paying attention to what's going on overseas with unlicensed stuff, if they're putting their price point near that and putting out the quality based off of the show that they're putting out, I got to give them credit. I'm going to give them credit this time. I think they put out a very reasonable price point. And they're going to give people all the way for, I think, 2 to 3 weeks to decide on whether they do that pre-order, and they're offering you payment installment plans. So props to NECA. Well done.
So, everyone knows that you're the Turtles expert on this show, but I'm going to agree with you, because when I saw this, I was like, whoa, and I expected that price tag to be hefty. And then when I saw 250, I was like, that's actually probably right where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, when I saw that they were doing payment arrangements, I was like, here we go. This is how you do it. And Brian, I'm going to turn the tables on you. Why aren't you getting this?
To go back to what you said a moment ago, space. I don't know that I have the room, especially when I've already committed to the DeLorean from Hot Toys. I just don't know if I can commit. I already have 2 street scene dioramas next to each other, set up on a shelf. Could I make it work? Yeah. But is it extremely busy? Yeah. And I have to think about it. I have a couple more weeks to think about it. I will. I'll put some thought into it and I'll make a decision. But as of right now, I don't know that it's necessary for what I want to do.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time.
It's fair.
We're doing it back and forth, but I'm leading to a point here, and that point is that you can kind of hear, like, Brian and I have really kind of zenned out on our collecting, and that's not to say that we're not engaged and passionate. It's just that we're not as what's the word I'm looking for here? As hyper about it. Like, we're not, for one thing, we're not giving into that FOMO, but we're just very, you have to think about these things for us with space and all the other things. And so, like, it's no small feat for Brian to turn down a Turtle van and me to turn down a Yoda,
Yeah.
But that tells you where we're at with our collecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we talk about, collecting is different for different people. If you have the space, you have the funding, and it brings you joy, go for it. But if you're in the same boat as Chris and I are typically, where it's like, oh, we need to budget this out. There are other things going on in our lives and requirements and things that we need to do. And then also there's the space we work with. We have to make those tough decisions. Like, we don't all live in a perfect world. So we got to make those decisions that work best for us, so we don't put ourselves in situations where we're overspending or we're overfilling that space and putting ourselves in terrible, tough situations, creating situations for ourselves that can be really difficult to overcome down the road.
Absolutely. So kind of getting back to the toy news here real quick, I did want to mention that before we get into today's reveals and some news from Hasbro on some upcoming fan first events. If you were one of the, got in the original Hasbro Pulse when they were offering it for free for a year and then they extended it. I think this is, I can't remember how many years down the line we are now. I think this is the 3rd time I'm having to actually renew and pay. But anyway, those are coming due for original members of the program that have stayed with it. And so I actually just renewed mine earlier this week. I got the email about a month ago saying, hey, it's coming up. And then I got an email and it says, so I renewed mine. I will say this, I get enough out of it, but I highly encourage everybody to make sure that you're getting your $50 worth, because if you're not getting your $50 worth, I can't say that it's worth it. For me, it's worth it. Because I take advantage of that free shipping. And even though I tend to get a lot of stuff from Amazon first, wherever, I do get enough that the shipping pays for itself. And I also get, other than for Star Wars, which for some reason, I don't know why they can't do it with Star Wars. It's got to be some kind of licensing thing. I get first crack at a lot of exclusives or stuff being a Pulse member. So it's paid off for me. But again, I suggest everybody, do those calculations for yourself to make sure that it's worth it for you. But also, Germany now can get in on the fun with Hasbro Pulse. So now you've got it in the US, the UK, and now Germany. So they're expanding it, which is good, again, for our international listeners. If we've got listeners in Germany, you can go to Hasbro Pulse now.
That's awesome. Willkommen. Welcome in.
There you go. So we had news this week that we're getting a Transformers and Power Rangers back-to-back Fan First Tuesday next week. And then they've sprinkled in over the last week or so, there's been some Transformers, and the Red Ecliptor was revealed. The Red Ecliptor is still available, I think, from all the retailers, including Pulse. And I think a lot of the Transformers there's some that have sold out, but a lot of them are still available. This is, oddly enough, finally, we are 4 months into the year. This is our first Power Rangers Fan First. So I think we've had 2 or 3 Star Wars, at least 2 or 3 Marvel, a couple G.I. Joe, I think at least 1 Transformer. So it's like, it's about time. But we still have a lot we're waiting for from last year. And earlier you heard me reference not complaining about our UK counterparts getting their stuff before us. They've been getting a lot of the stuff that we're still waiting for. So we have a long, I see why they're not doing it, because we have a lot of stuff to still get without piling on more. But without further ado, we'll get to today's news from the Fan First Wednesday. So yesterday, a couple of fan sites got to tease the TVC Figure and Dan, which, if you don't know who Figure and Dan is, he's one of the Cantina band members. He's the leader of the Model Nodes. He's coming on card. They did tease today that there is going to be I think a 5-pack coming later with all of them, but it won't be on card. This will be the only way to get one on card. So there will be a 5-pack coming. Here's my thought. My thought is that's going to be the Celebration exclusive.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I really, because we're around that time, and they kind of teased it, but they didn't say anything. A good buddy of mine actually pointed out this was actually, if Hasbro really wanted to get those Pulse memberships for people going to Celebration, you get privileges. If you're a Pulse member, you get to kind of not jump the line. They have a separate line, and I've actually used it at a couple of celebrations, and it's very handy. So you don't have to wait in the regular line. Yours is set aside for you. So they're not it's not a first come, first serve. But he had pointed out this would have been a great opportunity to get people who are going to Celebration to sign up by revealing whatever the exclusive is going to be. But we'll see. But to kind of get to today's news, and I'm going to say, me personally, I was underwhelmed. It's
par for the course. I'm
realizing that they're not. I'm obviously what they're doing is selling, because they're still doing this stuff. But I'm kind of just tired of the same thing, and I'm tired of getting. And we'll talk about it in a minute. I'm tired of getting the same thing. Oh, well, here it is in the Black Series. Oh, now here it is in TVC, or vice versa.
Here it is in the different shade color. Yeah. Here it is with mud on it. Here it is with a dent in the side. Oh, and we're going to take this one character and we're going to make it deluxe as well and make you charge you $10 more for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Is that, the first thing that they announced was Saw Gerrera, and I was excited because that's a figure I want.
Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, absolutely. And then they went on to say, oh yeah, by the way, he's going to be in our deluxe line because he's a bigger figure. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, nothing about him.
That's to me bias against deluxe. Big people like myself. I want to say that right now.
Well, here's the
I gotta
thing.
pay more for plastic version of me because I'm a bigger guy. That's rude.
The Gamorrean guard should be like, the Gamorrean guard was beefy, right? And I got why that was a deluxe figure. Now, mind you, that
It
was a
also had-
deluxe.
Yeah, but
Del-
the Gamorrean guard also had multiple different fabrics and items attached to it too. It wasn't just a plastic mold.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's that, and we're also talking about that the Gamorrean guard was what, 2-3 years ago pricing, deluxe pricing versus
Yeah.
deluxe pricing that we're going to pay now for Saw. And like, I get, like, let me use Moloch as an example. Great figure, underrated figure, but he didn't sell
Right,
well, and I
right.
get why. But that's a big chunk of plastic because that whole bottom part is nothing but plastic, right?
Yeah.
I get that for
Traffic cone.
deluxe, but this makes no sense to me. He's a little, so Saw Gerrera's got a little bit of a belly on him, and so we're going to charge you the deluxe price. He, and they tried to sell it again with the the deluxe deco and all that, and his oxygen stuff comes off. Well, it should come off so he can put it on his face.
I just thought about this. What if they release the Rancor Keeper one day? It's going to be in a deluxe package. Think about it. I mean, seriously.
So
is Chewbacca going to become a deluxe figure now? I'm like,
I mean, that's where we're heading, though.
end?
But that's where we're heading, and that was my point, And so the pricing for this is $34 is the retail price, right? So I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. I'll probably order this because my guess is it says spring 2023 availability. So I'll have some time to decide if I don't want it, but I really do want kind of, I canceled my Galen Urso because, I mean, not an exciting figure. Let's just be honest. I've been tempted to cancel my Anton Merrick.
How are you going to display him? You display him dead on the
ground. chasing after little Jin.
Oh God.
But
because the outfit he's in, he only wears it for a short moment and then dies.
Yeah, I canceled him, and I want Anton Merrick, but I'm getting tired of like waiting for that one, and I might just see if I can find it in stores. But
the only two new Rogue One figures that I thought were really good releases were the Riz Ahmed, because Riz Ahmed's character, I mean, that was needed. I mean,
Bodhi Rook.
Bodhi Rook, yeah.
Yep. That was my Saw Gerrera voice, by the way.
Yeah, and Saw Gerrera. But you shouldn't have to pay a $30+ price point for a character that doesn't come with like a crazy amount of accessories. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and so kind of moving on from there, they did a Star Wars, they're doing the deluxe series helmets, and they're doing Trapper Wolf. I don't know who is asking for a Trapper Wolf helmet.
Who's asking for that?
But this is like the third or fourth version of this helmet that they've put out. So, okay. And then we got, I'm trying to keep it Black Series before I move into TVC. We're doing some Infinite. So we're getting a Darth Vader all in white, which is from a comic. So I kind of get that. This harkens back to the comic packs.
Yeah.
It's a pass for me, but I get why they're doing it. I can't really knock on it because it does look cool.
Yeah, it's unique. It's different. The packaging's different. It's being sold to a specific community in a specific venue. So I'm not going to knock that.
That one that says that one is going to be Hasbro Pulse and Fan Channel. I believe the helmet's going to be everywhere, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Fan Channel. Okay, Pulse and Fan Channel. The Saw Gerrera is everywhere. And then, so let's see what other, we have this Leia figure, another kind
it's
of
based off of the
Leia
miniseries. It's based off of the Leia Organa comic miniseries from that Marvel put out not too long ago. It's pretty good. I own that miniseries. It was pretty good, and I will say that figure looks very well done.
It does.
The head sculpt is on point. And the hair sculpt in particular is on point for that character's look in the comic series. So they did a good job on that one.
I saw a lot of positive feedback about this one. So again, not for me, because I'm more of, I'm going to just stick with movies at this point.
Yeah.
this one seemed to be one that people were like, oh, I didn't know I needed that, and then they put it out, and so I do need it. So it's not all doom and gloom here.
Oh no, I think those were definitely the highlights.
Yeah.
I think Saw Gerrera is a highlight in the sense of the figure, how it's made, how it looks. It looks great. I just think they're definitely off on that price point, and the way they're trying to sell it to people, I think it is definitely, it's not a smart move.
Yeah. And so she's the same thing. She's fan channel, has Repulse. And then you have the Gaming Greats, which, as everyone knows, the Gaming Greats are GameStop exclusives, but they're doing Sev, which looks cool, but it's an Easy Trooper repaint. I don't need that one. And then what was the other one? They're doing this one's kind of cool. This one intrigued me. I'm probably not getting it, but we'll see. It's the 6-inch it's the Black Series, Sergeant Creel. Like that last name there. This one's spelled with a K. This one's spelled with a K though, but still. But
I don't know of any ancestors that lived in a galaxy far, far away. But yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
But he'll be available. Same thing, Pulse and fan channel. But I don't really know his story, but he comes with a lightsaber. So apparently he's battled Luke with
Oh yeah. That's happened in the comics. Yeah.
Yep. So we're getting him, and that one intrigued me. But again,
that one looked pretty cool.
There's some new parts on it. You can see some new parts, but for the most part, there's a lot of
that line was
reuse.
Definitely the highlight, I think, of the release. What was the comic line? Yeah,
absolutely. And so we already talked about Figuring Dan, which is most retailers. And so this is where we're going to get into. We're taking the 6-inch and we're shrinking it down. So we're getting a Death Watch Mandalorian in TVC, which, if you remember, we got him as a Walmart exclusive in the Black Series. Brian, you remember those because you chased down those and got the Ahsoka for me.
Yep, that's right. Those were a pain. I was in a line with about 8 other people trying to kill each other for it. Yeah.
So these are, and then they're doing the Super Commando, which is the version of the Mandalorian red with the horns on it.
Yep.
They're doing. Let's see here. There's a couple more before they're doing. Now this one's a good one. Well, although I have to say, I'm glad I sold mine when I did, because I did sell her because I had an unpunched one. Is Shea Vizsla.
Oh yeah.
So people have been clamoring for them to redo.
I think that's cool
one.
that they've released that character. I think that's pretty cool. I'm down for that. I'm not going to buy it, but I think it's cool for people.
Me too. It's a good choice. This one is a Pulse and fan channel though, so that's not like the other two where they're everywhere. And then can we just address the fact that Lando is clogging pegs now, and we're going to do yet another Lando figure in this crazy outfit from the game.
I have the Black Series of that Lando from Solo, and I do like it. I think it's a really good figure. I think it's a great figure. I just think the timing is off. I think the timing of the release doesn't work well. Like you just said, we already have had a couple of different releases of the older, more known version from the original trilogy from Return of the Jedi looks of Lando. So following it up with the Solo look of Lando right away, maybe the timing isn't that great, because I think that figure would sell if it was released at the right time in the right series of characters.
Well, this is like he's wearing that yellow shirt. So this is like
it's
that
from
shirt.
Solo.
It's from, well, I guess specifically this one they're saying is from Battlefront 2 from the video game, because this is a Gaming Greats.
What? It's a Gaming Greats?
Yeah, that's what they're saying here. It's a Gaming Greats Lando.
Wow.
From Battlefront 2. But this one's going to be available at Fan Channel and Pulse. But I'm just, like the running joke right now in our text group is you can go and you can find Lando in the TVC in his Cloud City gear, the blue outfit. You can go and find him in Black Series with the General. Like, this is like, clearly people are not buying Lando. So this, and I don't know who is clamoring for this.
I don't know if that says something about our society, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's what I think every time I see it. I'm like, well, I don't know what that says about society right now, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. So they have that one, and then they're doing ARC Trooper Jesse, which I swear they've done multiple versions of this, available for pre-order at most major retailers tomorrow. And then they're doing a 4-pack of the Imperial Death Troopers, which I think this is cool. I like this idea that they take these troopers and they're doing it in their new packaging, which is pretty sharp actually. And they're giving you 4 troopers, and these are going to be the highly articulated ones. I'm passing on these because I don't need a bunch of Death Troopers, but I did, I've gotten the Stormtrooper one, I got the Rebel Fleet ones. These are cool. It's a good way for people who want to build out your Mandalorian. If you got that Cantina, this is good for that. This is Pulse.
Navarre Canteen, yeah.
Yep. Then this is a Pulse exclusive. And then we're going to get into, I think that's it for everything.
Okay, I'm Hasbro'd out.
Well, I'm getting to the last one, and when you say you're Hasbro'd out, I am definitely Hasbro'd out on this gimmick, and they're doing Chewbacca in that prototype edition with the different colored limbs.
Oh god.
So I'm done with this. Like I let me just say, I was never an over the moon huge fan of this anyway. I have a Boba Fett. I think that's all I have from this line because I thought that one was kind of cool, but so now they're doing Chewbacca, and this is going to be Target, and of course
Such
it goes
a money grab.
Yeah, it goes up tomorrow at 1, so it goes up the same time as everything else at Target. So good luck
site
getting
will
them.
crash because people are all trying to get 18 different variations of the colors of retro Chewbacca.
I'll tell you what, if they were smart, they would just sell you a case where you're guaranteed to get every one, right? Because what people do is they just end up returning the ones they don't need.
Yeah. It's like that with any kind of mystery stuff. Yeah.
So that one's exclusive to Target. So a lot less exclusive. I mean, you have some fan channel stuff, but fan channel is usually like Pulse, Big Bad Toy Store, Dorkside Toys, Entertainment Earth. So you've got multiple outlets to go to. And then of course, like the gaming greats, that's all except for the Lando. Those are GameStop. And you can look out there. There's pretty good information. And then there was some pipeline reveals that I'm not going to get into here. We can talk about those later because really it's just saying, well, these are coming, but we don't know when.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So
all right, Hasbro, you're done. We're done with you right now. All right, we're moving on. We have had enough announcements of the same things coming out that you still haven't released. So what have you gotten recently, Chris?
So Brian, remember the Megazord, the Great Megazord Haul of 2020?
Yeah.
Megazords are back. Actually, I can't even say Megazord. So most of these are actually from the DX line in Japan. They're the Super Sentai versions, with the exception of the Dino
Get the
Fury.
good stuff.
Yeah. Well, the exception is Dino Fury. So I did get the US version for that after watching a bunch of reviews,
right,
and seeing the difference between the Rio Soldier stuff in Japan and this stuff. And there's pros and cons to both. Neither one is perfect, but most of the reviewers, strangely enough, was like, I would get the US version. And the overwhelming reason to get the US version is because it's actually articulated more than the Japanese version.
Which
so the Japanese
unusual.
version, until Hasbro got the license, yes. Because now that Hasbro has the license, they've been adding articulation when they do their Zords, which has been something. Now the Beast Morpher Zords, a lot of people give them credit for the fact that they did add articulation, but they weren't well done. But anyway, with this one, it's got the articulation. The Japanese one is literally like a vintage Star Wars figure. It can move its arms straight up and down. It can move its legs like straight, like the whole leg. Whereas the US version, and I have it right in front of me, it's sitting on my desk. Has ratcheted joints at the knees. Its legs can kind of split out. So it's got this ratchet that it can so it can give it a wider base to stand. So you can put it in action oriented poses. The elbows, ratcheted joints there. And then the arms can move in and out, much like the legs. And then it has the other where it can move the whole leg and the whole arm, just like the Japanese. And then the heads move. So the Japanese version, the heads do not move. The keys on this, which make up the different heads from the different combinations, they actually move. So you can give it personality. Yeah. So I got that version. And I'm happy with it. The Lego, it's kind of a Lego system they use for it to do, because this one, it's all based around the red one, and it straps different stuff on to make it different versions. the Lego version, the kind of, I'm saying Lego, it's not really a Lego, but it's kind of like the same port system that they use for this one. The Japanese version, a lot of people said that was better than the American one, but overall, because of the articulation and the price point, this is a third of the price of the Japanese one.
Wow.
Yeah. But so I got that. I got from Gokaiger, I got Goka O, which is the main Zord, and most of the auxiliary Zords. I only need one auxiliary Zord and Daijujin, which is the Six Rangers Zord. And those are the Japanese versions. And then I've gotten all the auxiliary mech for Shinkino, which is Samurai is the US version. My Shinkino, I got him in 2020, but he was the Japanese version. So I've got the auxiliary Zords, the Claw Zord that I talked about getting a little while ago. I already have that. That's Japanese version. So I'm kind of down that path, and I have a bunch of stuff I'm watching on eBay. I'm not like, the nice thing about this is I'm in no rush. Like, one of the things that I heard, and we'll talk about it in another show, we're going to do like a vintage collecting versus modern collecting. But when somebody that stopped by our booth was like, I pretty much only collect vintage. And the reason why is because it's a finite collection. I know what's in that collection, and it's a finite collection. They're not constantly coming out with stuff. And so what's nice about collecting these older mecha or megazords is that from older seasons that are not from the current season, which is Dawn Brothers over in Japan, it's finite. I know what's in that collection, and I'm in no hurry. I can do it at my own pace. But I also, from Hobby Link Japan, have a Super Sentai Toys book. It goes over the 45 years of Super Sentai toys. And so it's all in Japanese, but the pictures look fantastic. So I got it like as a reference guide for me. I got a Motu Origins Clawful. And this isn't so much a toy, but I felt it was worth mentioning. I did get the deluxe Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga game.
Cool.
Yep. And then I bought a little armory for my Action Force weapons. So they're like,
oh, cool.
Yeah, you put it together. You put it together, and then you can do it. And they have different ones you can put side by side, and you can basically, it's like a weapons rack, so you can have your stuff on there. So that's pretty much what I got. But the big stuff is definitely the Megazords and Mecha, and that's really where I'm focused right now.
Yeah, well, a few things for me. One thing that is going to physically be in my hands in the next couple of days is my Hot Toys Ahsoka is finally going to be here. She is en route to me at the moment. I mentioned about Holothon earlier. I did pick up the Mirage Fugitoid, just the regular edition, no signature edition here. And also I picked up the Griff Tannen. A shout out to a friend of mine in Castleberry area of Florida who hid it for me to go there after work one day. I was able to grab that figure. So I really appreciate him. Want to give him a shout out. He knows who he is.
Nice.
That helped me out in finding that Griff Tannen from Back to Future 2. So I'm very happy to have all those three things. But that's about it for me on what I've grabbed most recently. What I'm looking forward to, though, and Chris, I'm sure we'll talk about these two figures as well, but is the Mafex Endgame Cap and Thor, which keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed back. So hopefully those will be coming out in the next couple of months. Be able to finally complete my Endgame set of characters so I can start putting together that diorama from Endgame Final Battle. And then also to go along with my Hot Toys Ahsoka, Hot Toys Mall, which has released in Hong Kong, should be my final payment, and that should be shipping to me beginning of next month in May. So I'm excited about those things.
I'm excited to hear you're getting your Ahsoka. I know you've been looking forward to that.
Yep, 2 years.
Yeah,
waiting 2 years for that sucker there.
We've probably been waiting longer for the Mafex stuff, to be fair.
It's about the same time. It's actually I think I ordered both around the same time.
Yeah,
So,
I know that Thor came a little later after
Thor was
Cap,
later, but Cap was definitely the same time. And to be all honesty, Ahsoka is more my wife's than it is mine. So
yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing there. The Mafex that keeps getting pushed back, although I think I heard that they had a COVID outbreak at the factory, so they had to shut
Yeah,
it
in
down.
January they sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course now you've got and this is impacting me in my work life. The biggest, I think the second biggest electronics port in China has been shut down.
Yeah.
So, here we go again. But so mine's pretty much the same as last time, which, just to remind everybody, was the Mofex Cap and Thor, and then the GI Joe Classified Wave 5, which I keep hoping we're going to get it before July, specifically Spirit. And the only thing I'm adding to that is anything I have on pre-order for Power Rangers, I'll be happy to get at this point. But Brian, that takes us kind of like, and that was a lot to get through, but it takes us to our main segment now, where we're going to talk about international collecting. And as I mentioned here, I've kind of on this kick of collecting internationally, and collecting some of the Japanese mecha from over there. And I know that you've dabbled in collecting stuff from overseas as well.
Sure.
So let's get into it.
Yeah. So the way with what we mean by we talk about international collecting is there's two different ways of looking at this. One is first of all, regardless, there are companies overseas, mostly Asian countries, that produce and develop toys and collectibles. Now, there are two different venues that you have to purchase those items from, those that are licensed. Now, many of these companies are licensed to sell within their Asian countries of origin where their companies are centered. But some of them are not allowed to sell in Western countries, and more in particular, the United States. But then some are allowed to sell some stuff here in the States. For example, if we look at Bandai, creates a lot of different things, from model kits to figures to mystery mini items and all kinds of different things. Actually, Bandai is going through a whole new renaming here in the US division. Actually, they're combining with Namco and creating a whole new term. Instead of being called Bluefins, or being called Bandai Namco something else. I can't remember the full name. That happened today. I actually got an email from Bandai about the rebranding. Now, Bandai distributes things in the US through that platform. Now, the stuff they sell is stuff that is licensed to be sold in the US, but made overseas. For example, the SH Figuarts line, which is a conjunction of Bandai and a subsidiary called Tamashi Nations, creates and develops super articulated 1/12 scale figures that have very realized, almost Hot Toys-esque kind of features to their face sculpts. Now, these figures are released here in the US only for certain brands that are allowed, like Marvel, Dragon Ball Z, and some other brands, maybe like Stranger Things that just started coming out. But there are a lot of different variations, much like you have with Hasbro. There are versions that are articulated, are retro style, and different things like that. Bandai also has lines that are more of the higher end collectible, more of the lower end collectible. Now, Bandai does also make Star Wars figures as well, outside of Marvel and Dragon Ball Z and other platforms. But Star Wars, which has a license to only be sold in that scale here in the US through Hasbro, which means if you're wanting to buy an item like that from Bandai, a very high level SH Figuarts Star Wars figure, you have to order it from Japan. Now, when I say from Japan, meaning you have to buy it through a third party. You can't buy it directly from the company, which means you have to go with a company that sells Japanese items, which can be shipped to the States or to other countries where that license is not allowed. You can't physically buy an item directly from Bandai over here in the States if it's not licensed. So, for example, you would have to order it through a company like HobbyLink Japan or Niningami or Amazon Japan or Kotetsu Toys Japan, or there's a lot of companies that provide that service as a company that will buy the items wholesale. Think of it as like you trying to buy an item from a Target or a Walmart or something like that, but you're buying it from, or even like a comic shop here, but you're buying it from overseas. Now, there are some companies here who then buy from a buyer from the seller. So a good example, Big Bad Toy Store will sell some of those Star Wars figure arts figures, but that's already passed hands twice before it's getting to you, which means it's already been bought by a seller overseas and then sold from that seller to another seller here in the States in Big Bad Toy Store. So just to help clarify some things for people, I wanted to go through that as an example, because there are items that you can buy directly from Japan, from sellers and from direct creators, but then there are things that you can't, that you have to buy through intermediaries. So I just wanted to explain that piece first, Chris, before we jumped into things, because I think there's always a lot of confusion there on how international sales work, especially when we use a good example like Bandai, which has licenses that can be sold in different places.
Absolutely. And Bandai is very confusing because so they have, you had mentioned they have like the Tashami Nations and they have some other things within that Bandai line, but you have something like Gundam Universe, which is sold in Japan
Exactly.
and other places, but it's also sold here.
It also can be sold here.
Can be sold here. But then you have like where you see figure arts for, Dragon Ball Z or Marvel, but you don't see them for Star Wars, or you don't see them for the Super Sentai characters. Although Bandai has done Power Ranger versions of some of those. And then you get into like at San Diego Comic-Con, sometimes they can get away with selling that because it's at a con. They can sell the Super Sentai version because they did go Kaiser at San Diego one year.
A great example. I love that you brought that up. A great example of that domestically would be NECA. When NECA first sold their first Ninja Turtle figures, they were not licensed to sell Ninja Turtle figures, but they were allowed at the con to sell a certain amount to the group of people that were there. And that's what we got. That's when we first got those Mirage Turtles in a pack. And that's how that happened. And that's also how the movie Turtles happened, because they were only being allowed to sell during that con event. They couldn't sell wholesale.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the point that I was making there, is that there's different rules surrounding conventions. So they can get away with selling some of this stuff at conventions, but they can't sell it from a retailer or from a, from something like that.
An authorized seller.
Right. And as you mentioned, Big Bad Toy Store, which is probably the only one, because I don't think Dorkside or Entertainment Earth might on some stuff, but not on others. But Big Bad Toy Store does do a lot of stuff that you can only get from those Asian countries. But you're, not only is it passing hands twice, but you're going to pay a premium for that instead of ordering it from. Usually, not always, but usually there's some cost savings even with the shipping. Ordering it from a Japanese.
It depends
site.
on the item. Yeah, you got to You got to compare costs. For example, Nendoroid line is created by a company called Good Smile. Good Smile is one of the major companies in Asia that produces figures and stylized collectibles. And my wife loves to collect Nendoroid, and they do stuff with the Pixar, of Disney, of anime characters. And some of those, and all those items can be licensed and sold in the US, but that you can't, there's not like a wholesale option for people to buy those up. So Big Bad Toy Store, sometimes their prices will be very competitive because it's licensed. So like, for example, if I'm looking at one Nendoroid, the price may be almost exactly the same as buying it from Japan. But if I buy that item from Japan, they may also offer a discount because they get so many of them. They can sell them a lot quicker. Whereas in the US, we have to wait for all those to come over in a big barge and then see how many we have to sell. So that offers kind of a premium level cost to it, right? Because of the small amount to choose from. Whereas overseas, they may discount it $20 or so, which could make that cost plus shipping, depending on the shipping cost at that time, could save you about 10, 20, maybe even $30.
Absolutely. And here's what I'm going to say about shipping. Oddly enough, I ordered my Clawful Target because he showed up, or my Clawful from Masters of the Universe Origins from Target. He showed up on the website and it was in stock. And so I was able to cancel my Big Bad Toy Store pre-order for that. It took him like over a week to get here from Arizona, was the original shipping destination. Do you know that I ordered something from Japan and I had it DHL faster than I had that figure, which shipped in the US? So, Now, obviously, not everything is going to ship that fast. It depends on the shipping speed and the
It usually
supplier
does.
you're working with, and how they do it. But I have to tell you, in the stuff that I've ordered, most of the stuff comes DHL, and it comes quick.
Within like 2 days.
It's
like
ridiculous.
Within a day or two. It's insane how quick it arrives. And I've had that experience with both FedEx and DHL overseas. That's usually if you're, and I will make this suggestion. Here's another tip. If you're going to order an item from overseas and get it shipped from shipped from a company overseas, you're going to pay a little bit more money, but it's going to make sure your item gets here, not just quickly, but safely, is FedEx or DHL. Always choose one of those two options.
I concur. And a lot of the eBay sellers from, at least that I've been, looking at from Japan, will use DHL. I think they can't use the Japanese postal service because they're still not delivering, which is fine. But I completely agree. Spend a little bit extra, use FedEx International or DHL. My preference is DHL, but either one of those is going to pay a little bit more now. So I talked about that book that I have come. I don't have it in hand yet. I'm going to have it Monday. I just ordered it from Hobby Link Japan. I paid a little bit extra for the DHL shipping, but there's 2 points I want to make here. I ordered it 2 nights ago. It has to process, plus they're on a different time, but I'm going to have it Monday. There's a possibility I may even have it Friday, because I've gotten stuff from Japan that's actually said, oh, it's going to be here this day, and it showed up a day or two before that too. The second point is that even buying that from Japan and paying for DHL, I'm getting it cheaper than I could get it on eBay or any other source that I was able to find it, because that's how big the price increase is for trying to get it here in the US.
And what I want to tell a story is I pre-ordered a while ago from Nindingami, who's probably my go-to for pre-ordering. I mean, if you're wanting to know a specific company to choose, if you're looking to do pre-orders, the only thing about Nindingami is you can't cancel those pre-orders. If you do, they will not allow you to do business with them ever again. They're very particular about that. But I will say, if you know you're going to buy it and you're going to stick with that order no matter what, Nindingami is my favorite choice overseas. And for example, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, isn't that where our Thors are coming from?
Yes.
Yep.
So the problem isn't with Nindingami, it's with Mafex releasing it. But Nindingami will get it to you quick and properly packed. I've never had an issue with them, and I've ordered good 10 to 12 things over the last couple of years from them. For example, I ordered the Nendoroid, which I mentioned earlier before, the Nendoroid Venom and Donald Duck. And those items are still on pre-order on Big Bad Toy Store, by the way. And I've had them in hand for over a month.
Oh, and
I paid less money.
I'm kind of
Big Bad Toy Store.
Yeah, I'm kind of regretting ordering my Mafex cap from Big Bad Toy Store and not going direct from Japan, because I know when you get yours, you're going to have yours like a month before I'm going to have mine at least.
It'll be at least a month to 2 months. And if that matters to you, then obviously that's important to do that. But also on top of that, it was also much cheaper. So to point out, and I'm not trying to badmouth Big Bad Toy Store, they have to make money. And that's part of them, because they're offering this service to buy an item that they're having to get shipped all the way from overseas. Okay. So their Venom right now is $109.99. Okay. I paid for both Donald and Venom shipped from Japan for, I can tell you right now,
yeah, while you're looking,
while I looked that up,
while you're looking that up, I was just gonna say, the Big Bad Toy Store, that's on me, because I got it. I decided I wanted that cap late in the game, and by the time I went to go get it, it was pretty much out in Japan. So I didn't really have much of a choice, because I didn't decide that I was going to get it till later in the game. So that's where I'm at. That decision is on me. But if I had done it earlier, I definitely would have got it from Japan. And while you're looking that up, I also
I got it now.
Oh no,
All
okay.
right. So in total cost shipped, and this is talking about, this is overnight FedEx. It got to me in less than 2 days from Japan. It was $157 total, and that's for 2 Nendoroids. Okay, so and that's shipped too. So Venom by itself is $109.99. Donald is $78.99 by himself, not taking into account shipping of the $4 and the taxes you would pay on top of that. So I saved probably close to $50 to $60 range of money by buying directly from Japan.
Yeah.
And that's including expedited shipping.
Yeah. And, just for our audience too, like, because we do have international listeners, when we talk about international collecting, we're talking about that from here in the States. So for you, if you live in an Asian country, maybe the international collecting might be importing the Hasbro stuff from the US. Although
Exactly.
I know that like, because you'll see all the time, the Hasbro stuff usually makes its way out in Asia first, because Hasbro does sell in that market as well. But so we're talking from our perspective here in the United States.
Tomy.
Yeah. But we, reasons kind of why we collect international toys, other than the fact that it's not available in the US because of, like we talked about, licensing, and I'm not sure how the Super Sentai versus Power Rangers goes, because I do know that some of the Japanese style Megazords were sold at Toys R Us, but I think those were done with some kind of special caveat. But then again, that license at that time was under Bandai. So it was Bandai Japan and Bandai America. So it's a lot easier. Hasbro is not going to let you sell Super Sentai stuff if they have a Power Rangers equivalent over here. It's much like the figure arts. It's too much competing. So they're not going to do it. And
exactly.
Then we haven't talked about it yet, but third-party items or customs. Yes. And when we say third party, we are specifically meaning unlicensed items.
Correct.
So, and don't be swayed by that, because there are some third-party stuff out there that is better than the licensed stuff.
Oh yeah, and it's handmade quality and some of the stuff. For example, as you all know, I've transitioned into more 6-scale stuff and being very specific and focused alongside some of the 12-scale stuff I have. For example, one item that I bought, I think I mentioned on our show, is the Dark Toys Rick. And what that is an unlicensed Blade Runner 6-scale figure of Harrison Ford as Rick Deckard in Blade Runner. And it is phenomenal. Chris, you really need to see it. You need to come over and look at it. Like, the face sculpt on it is insane. It's one of the best Harrison Ford face sculpts, like a young Harrison Ford face sculpt.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good third-party stuff out there, and a lot of times, not always, but it's very affordably priced.
Yeah.
Now,
this was $170, and it came with a number of accessories.
Yeah. So licensed, like for instance, if you're buying licensed stuff from overseas, you're usually not going to get that. You'll get it at a discount overall versus trying to get it from like we talked about earlier, from somebody who does import it into the US, because they don't have to pass on that cost. But you're not going to get it for those good price. But we're talking about third-party stuff. And a friend of mine just got his from So Toys. He just got, now it's based on Gambit, from the X-Men, and it's called
the Cajun Card Dealer.
Yeah, it looks phenomenal. He sent pictures. Oh my gosh,
this is my area,
gorgeous. Man. Yeah, but he sent that to me, and I was like,
it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So Toys is fantastic. So I'll give some background on So Toys. They make the figures in the comic world, or even the film-based world of DC and Marvel, or even television, the characters that typically the licensed companies aren't making. They're finding their niche. So all of the Titans characters from the Titans series on HBO Max, they've made almost every one, and are continuing to make them. Some of the CW characters, they were the first company to put out a Flash based on the CW. Hot Toys just put out their version, but there had been one available from So Toys for years. That some people even say some of it is better. Some aspects of that figure is better than the Hot Toys, but then there are obviously aspects of Hot Toys that are far superior, because Hot Toys is amazing with the amount of detail they put into their figures. But the point is to get an unlicensed figure for a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for a licensed hot toy that can at least, hold its own and standing in your display case shows you that there are options for every type of collector out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, while we're kind of talking about, you mentioned Hot Toys, and they are an international company. However, they do have a distribution deal with Sideshow, and that's how we're able to get them in the
Correct.
US.
You can only buy in the US from Sideshow.
From Sideshow. Yep. So that's, they have an exclusive deal. So if you want to get it in the US, then that's where you're going. But
there's a lot going on in that community. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there,
yeah.
but there is a lot of frustration there sometimes with Sideshow. Some is warranted, some isn't. What I will say though is Sideshow has a monopoly over a product that is hotly wanted, no pun intended. So it does create a little animosity, especially when others try to buy from companies that are overseas and getting it imported, like let's say like a figure arts item. But then the difference here is Hot Toys are licensed to be sold here only through one retailer, whereas Hot Toys can be sold by any retailer overseas. So it can create some issues there. There are a couple of companies, I'm not going to give one of these companies any recognition because they're terrible at customer service overseas, that sells a lot. And they're kind of one of those companies, more of like a reseller than it is an actual company, because there have been some licensed sellers like Jazz Inc. we've talked about in the show before, who do amazing license work for Batman and various Batman properties, as well as have done some unlicensed Star Wars stuff in the past. But they won't even sell through this company overseas because they're so shady. But you have to be careful when you're choosing. If you want to get something quick, let's say you're starting up your YouTube channel, or you're trying to get the item first to give a review, or you're trying to build your listener base, be careful who you buy from overseas if you're new to the game. Make sure you do your due diligence. Go to Reddit, go to different reviews, read what people are saying in different Facebook groups that you're a part of in different collector communities. Make sure you're aware before you buy from someone just because you think you can get it a little bit quicker. Be careful. There are some companies overseas that are fantastic, like Toy Buying Agent is a great website. Jean Toy, 1/6 Kit. Those are all great sites run very professionally and manage their things very, very well. Great reward programs. But be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to do your due diligence because, I mean, obviously you're buying from an unknown, unknown to us here in the US. So you have to do your due diligence and look around and get reviews and stuff. So, a good example of that is Ramen Toys. So they're an up and coming toy company. And when they started, they were just getting going. So a lot of us, they were doing their third party version of, they're calling them the 80s Commanders, which is the Centurions. A lot of people were like, are these guys for real? And they were asking for payments up front and stuff. So even Robo from the Foosh was like, I like these, but I don't know that I'm, they are legit, but I think we needed to find out. And so they put out the 80s Commanders. They're putting, they did them individually. They are putting out a second set where the colors are a little bit closer and it's a 3-pack, but they actually now have a license deal with Super 7 and they're doing the Silverhawk. So they're doing, I can't remember the main Silverhawk's name now. They're doing him, and they're going to do it a little bit better than maybe a lot better than the Super 7 ones, just from the paint perspective of the Super 7 ones look very gray. They got a lot of heat for that. Whereas these are going to be a metallic paint. I don't think they're going to be vac metallized like the vintage ones, because the problem with vac metallization is it's bad for the environment. And after a certain amount of time, it does start to chip and flake, and it's really hard to keep it looking nice. So, but they're doing like a very silver paint, and then they're doing Monstar. So
Quicksilver is the name of the character.
Quicksilver. Yes. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was thinking, I went through I'm like Blue Steel, Copper Kid. Nope.
Yeah.
Quicksilver. So they're doing him. And I'm not it looks
And
cool.
that pre-order is open right now until April 17th.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. that number keeps coming up again. That
I
date,
know. It's also Easter.
yeah. But so Ramen Toys is the real deal, and they've teased that some stuff they're doing next year. Now they're not putting out a lot because they're a small company, but these are the type of companies that are coming out. And some of the other reasons why, as far as why I collect international stuff is, a good one is if you're a fan of a foreign property with little or no US presence or support. Now I'm not a fan of Kamen Rider. It's just not my thing, but there is a huge fan base over here. But that stuff, you can't get that stuff over here. So you have to go.
You have to order it.
Yep. And there's certain, while the US, and I think you can thank Toonami and maybe some of those shows that came over in the 80s, like the Ronin Warriors and stuff like that, for introducing anime. It's still, the anime that we get in the US is still a fraction, unless you have a subscription to Crunchyroll or something like that.
HBO Max.
Is a fraction of what's available. And so not all of those properties are available here in the US. And the other thing I'll say is that in a lot of cases for the international stuff, if it's something where you have a US version and a Japanese version or a international version, there's better detail in some cases. So you'll hear, if you follow Transformers at all, or even have any kind of have your ear to the ground, third-party Transformers is huge because a lot of them look better. They transform better. They don't have the kibble. They're painted better than the mass-produced Hasbro stuff. Or for instance, I've talked about it here, is the Super Sentai mecha versus the Power Ranger stuff. In most cases, the Japanese versions have the chrome, paint on them, whereas the US will have a flat paint, or there's just little details. And then in a lot of cases, more electronics, especially stuff coming out of Asia, it tends to have more electronics than we do in the US.
Yes.
You can take it or leave it. I'm not an electronics guy personally. I find it in some cases annoying. And then I in some cases it's really cool. But the other thing is I tend to, if I'm going to display my stuff, and this is just a tip for everybody, I do not leave batteries in anything because you can forget about them. And once that battery leaks, it can corrode it and ruin the whole thing. And, for instance, when I bought my, that Naboo Queen Starship, that was sealed. And so the first thing I did when I got it home was I opened it because I knew I was going to open it. Well, I bought it to open, but I went and took the batteries out, and sure enough, they didn't leak bad. There was just tiny, I was able to clean it up. No problem. You wouldn't even tell now, but that you have to be careful with stuff with batteries. And so electronics for me is cool, but I'm not going to display my stuff for my collection. Now, if I was having people over to kind of view the collection, maybe I'll throw some batteries and some stuff. But even my lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge, I don't store that I built. I don't store I have that stored with with the batteries in it, just because there's just too much. But a lot of stuff from Asia, obviously it's exciting to collect international, but I've been so educated. Brian and I have learned so much. So for instance, here's a little tip that I learned recently, and I'm going to share it with everybody. If you're looking to collect Super Sentai Mecha, if we start at Power Rangers Mighty Morphin and up through Power Rangers Mystic Force, Bandai America used the exact same molds as Japan. So they might not be as detailed, but the molds are the same. They're still the same size. After that, Bandai America started to make their own molds, and they downsized things. They really started to kind of make them smaller. And so at that point, you really want to go after the Japanese version, because almost always the Japanese version is going to be better detailed, be bigger, just be better in general. But if you're willing, like for instance, the Zeo Megazord, the main Megazord, otherwise known as O-Ranger in Japan, the US version came with rope for the two bottom Zords, which are pulled by the Bull Zord and the Lion Zord in their chariot form. In Japan, they came with actual chain, like it is in the show. Now, that Zord is the same mold, but that's an example of a little thing that's changed, that the Japanese version, which are very expensive at this point, because that's an way older series. but that's an example of where you're going to get like sometimes it's better or higher quality.
Yeah, yeah. And what I wanted to add on to about the electronics and pieces of that is there are some nuances and changes that are happening in collectibles and toys with being able to manage things that involve being powered up. And a lot of little micro USB cords are being developed that allow you to use rechargeable battery packs, where you can even keep it constantly charged to that battery pack and hide that battery pack somewhere. So it's not in the item, the batteries, that it is charged from another place. So
Yeah.
things to be thinking about and new innovative ways of things that are being developed.
Right. And then, of course, and this is probably for very cheap toys. You do have those toys where they come with a battery, not like a typical, AA or AAA, but they come with a battery that you can't access. And once the battery dies, your toy essentially, you no longer have the functionality, in addition to the fact that that battery at some point is probably going to leak.
It's true. Yeah. So be aware of those things. But I do want to go through some companies that if you haven't heard of, you should look into. We've talked about ramen toys. We've talked about So-So toys. We've talked about Good Smile in the sense of the Nendoroid line, and they do some other things as well. But there are some other companies too. We talked about Mafex figures, but the company, if you're wanting to look up information about it, is called Metacom. And they're not just known for making Mafex figures, which are your typical 12 scale figures based on plastic forms and things like that. But they also, Metacom has made 6 scale figures in the past as well. And it was called the Real Action Hero line, and actually used to sell that. And they still sell their items somewhat through a Sideshow distributor here in the US. But they used to have a lot of licenses, and they used to do, like, they've done Indiana Jones in the Real Action Hero line. They've done James Bond, all kinds of other things. So if you're ever looking in the history of that stuff, it's pretty cool to look at. Also, I do want to mention the Beast Kingdom company. They do a lot of stuff from both small and the realm that you've seen. They have multiple licenses, including Star Wars and Marvel. They've done the Egg Attack figures, you've probably seen before. They also do what's called Mastercraft series, where they do statues and kind of mini pop-esque kind of looking things, kind of similar to Cube Mechanics here in the US. But also Beast Kingdom is known for the Dynamic Action Heroes line, which is kind of a niche scale that's different. I believe it's like a 1/8 or 1/7 or maybe even 1/9 scale. I'm not sure exactly, but of major characters. Like the latest two that are probably most well known that they announced were the 1989 Joker and 1989 Batman. But that dynamic action hero line is like all cloth. They sell their stuff through Big Bad and through their own site. They have a US distributor, beastkingdom.us, as well as they do sell. Sideshow also does sell some of their items as a retailer. So that's one company that's centered over in Asia, but they sell their stuff through a number of different retailers in the US. We talked about Bandai, but also I do want to mention Kyoto, which also is known for their amazing Yamagata line, which are very stylized, super duper duper articulated, almost to a cartoonish articulation of characters, as well as their old school Revoltech line, which at one point they did do a few Star Wars characters that I believe Big Bad Toy Store still has a couple of C-3PO and R2-D2s stuck in their warehouse somewhere that they're trying to get rid of. So those are some items that I definitely wanted to mention. Some different companies are out there you may not have heard of.
Yeah, I remember the Revoltech line. I remember that. And a good call on calling out that Metacom does other stuff, and they do the Mafex line. You'll find that a lot with these Japanese or Asian companies. I know a lot of what we're talking about is Asian, but they will do where they have like Bandai, and then there's a bunch of stuff that falls under, or Metacom, and then they have a bunch of stuff that falls under that. That's quite common. But, we talked about Hobby Link Japan. Hobby Link Japan is a good source too. And I can't believe we haven't talked about it. I talked about Gundam universe, but Gunpla, which is the build model kits that you
Oh,
can
yeah.
build.
Yeah.
Now, those are starting to become more readily available in the US, but there
Yes.
are exclusive versions that you can only get in Japan. There are sets that you can only get in Japan. The more expensive sets can be a little bit, but there are hobby shops in the US that carry them. You can find them actually. Hobby Lobby or Michael's sometimes will have the model section. They'll have some of their Target's got them now.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for stuff from Japan, like Hobby Link Japan does that, and they also do like Tokusatsu toys, which Tokusatsu encompasses Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and some other properties. And then we talked about Ninigami, you talked about, and then I'm going to say Amazon. So hear me out here. Amazon, not just Amazon Japan, but Amazon US, you can find stuff on there, both used and new.
Yep.
If you look, not because Amazon can sell it, but because an international seller can sell it, or somebody in the US can import them and then sell them on Amazon.
Exactly.
So I have been able to find like all of my Q Ranger stuff. All of that came from Amazon, except for a couple of things that I got on eBay, but most of it came from Amazon. Right now, I'm debating on getting into Kira Major, which I can find on Amazon. Zenkaiger, which is the season that aired before Don Brothers. Don Brothers is the current season in Japan. That stuff can be bought brand new in the box on Amazon. So you got to look. Just be aware, look at the reviews, because some people, just like eBay, because eBay is another source. Just look at your reviews, because some people will try and sell knockoffs, although I haven't seen much in the way of knockoffs for Super Sentai. But there are some third-party, really cheap-looking stuff, and you can kind of tell by pictures. But two other sites, if you're looking to get Tokusatsu toys, tough word to say. CS Toys International and Kotatsu Toys Japan, they sell new and used stuff, so you can get it from there. Mr. S runs CS Toys, and I can recommend them because they come highly recommended in the Power Rangers community. Our friends over at MMPR Toys order from them all the time. Actually, Josh over at Lightning Storm, I think, orders from them. So you can order from them, and you can go back and look at old stuff. They get new stuff every Saturday, so you can go on and see what they got new. And then Kotatsu Toys, same thing. And he actually has a YouTube channel, so he'll actually review the current Sentai that's going on, and he'll talk about like Power Rangers, because he watches Power Rangers versus Super Sentai, and he's over in Japan. So it's really cool to kind of get that perspective of somebody on the other side watching Power Rangers and comparing it, and then talking about, he'll talk about Kamen Rider for those of you that like Kamen Rider. So those are some good sites. I also want to mention that international collecting can also be the vintage Star Wars figures were produced in various countries around the world under different. So you had you had Palatoy in the UK, you had Top Toys, I think down in South America, and some other things. So there's even that kind of international collecting where here you're collected the Kenner ones, but people go and start looking for those other ones overseas. Now, something that old with the Star Wars, they've made their way around all over the world. So it's a little bit harder to find. The prices are going to be a little bit higher, but you can find something like that with a line that was licensed out to other toy manufacturers in other regions of the world where there was different versions. So if you're big into the variation hunting, that can be a form of international collecting too. But I will warn you, it is expensive, and and you have to make sure that you know what accessories it's supposed to come to, because there are differences. So if you're looking to go down that path, I would highly suggest plugging into some groups on Facebook or online, some toy groups that really have some subject matter experts that you can lean on, because it's very overwhelming. I mean, just with Yoda stuff alone, I was blown away by a lot of the differences. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention some of my suggestions for places to go if you're looking for third party unlicensed items. My suggestions, my favorite two sites. If you're looking for unlicensed 12 scale stuff, the best site to look at is going to be Jean Toy, which is GIANTOY. Jean Toy is also a great place to look for 6 scale unlicensed item as well. 1/6 kit is also a great place. I've mentioned them actually many times before because it's also typically the place to get Maniple heads, custom heads, and also 1/6 kit is really fantastic customer service. They also have an online Facebook community that is very active. The owner is on there all the time. It's just a great company, really, really great company. Probably my favorite overseas place to look at items alongside John Toy. And what's great about 1/6 kit and John Toy, shipping is included in their prices to the US. For those looking from the US, they include shipping in their final price. So shipping is basically free.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, as we kind of wrap up our thoughts on international collecting, just have fun with it. Just make sure you're vetting where you're getting your stuff from. The companies we mentioned here have been vetted. You can rest assured that these are reputable companies. But
Absolutely.
if you have a company that you've dealt with that's reputable, hit us up on our social media and let us know, because I'm always down to find places that I can get stuff. And just let us know, because I'd be interested to find out who those are. I'm always on the lookout for stuff like that. But yeah, just enjoy and kind of as a teaser, because we're coming up on the month of May, and as you know, May is like Star Wars month. So you have I'll call it I guess the Star Wars holiday for everybody, which is May the 4th.
Right.
And then then there's the true Star Wars holiday, which is May 25th.
Star Wars Day, as dedicated from Los Angeles mayor back when, May 25th, which is the original release date of the first film. And I believe at least one other film was released on that exact day as well.
I believe. Yep.
Yep. And Memorial Day weekend has always been known as Star Wars weekend until, the other company took over. But may the 4th be with you, right? And some people like to have fun and say Revenge of the Sixth, because we can't take that away from Cinco de Mayo. Come on. And then at the end of the month we have the official Star Wars Day on May 25th. So a lot of Star Wars going on. So Chris teasing there, we might be doing some Star Wars convo, maybe some historical discussion going on, possibly. We may be talking about some different things during that month. So something to look forward to, especially if you are hardcore or dabble in the world of a galaxy far, far away. But it has been a fun conversation yet again, Chris. I enjoyed talking about things that I'm very much into right now, which is a lot of import stuff, a lot of unlicensed third-party things, getting crazy. Starting to dig into stuff that's a little bit unknown, hasn't been treaded down too much before. But as always, enjoy what you collect and collect what you enjoy.
Well, Brian, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Come back next month to hear us talk toys and collectibles on Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast. Until next time, we wish you good luck on your toy hunt.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, we would love a 5-star review on iTunes. You can find Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast, on Facebook at Thrill of the Hunt Collector Podcast. There you can interact with us and find links to our other social media channels. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this show are those of the hosts and belong solely to them. This podcast is not affiliated with any of the toy companies or licenses mentioned in the show. This show may not be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without express written consent from the hosts.